Science made easy. How to grow maximal muscle or even maintain muscle mass during the corona lockdown. It's your boy, it's Johnny. He's back with another video, Grow, Strengthen X. This video is probably a bit of a special video because we're going over the full scientific methodology of how to maximize muscle potential. Now, this can work either in the gym or this can work for the lockdown. Let's say you don't have any weights like myself. How do you maximize muscle growth? Well, recently myself, unfortunately, I have not been training to maximal load. And I have actually had to reconfigure, reconstruct my own training, and I thought it'd be good for you guys, especially for everyone who has been in the gym and has been lifting maximal load. So how can we do that with the lockdown if we have barely any weight? Well, yesterday's video I went over some of this, just by producing more load, essentially by different ranges of movement, different types of exercises, just so you can get more stimulus for that potential muscle. Yesterday's one was chest. We can go over variations of what to do to maximize full body potential. So there are 3 types of processes that goes into hypertrophy, so gaining muscle mass. There is mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. So these are the 3 processes, and to be fair, they work together. And this is all based on scientific studies. However, what I will say is that all scientific studies come up to some debate, to some way or shape or form when it comes to growing muscle. So I'm going to give you the best potential program, volume sets, volume range, load of how to gain muscle mass during this lockdown. So first and foremost, we're going to get stuck into it. So the first one is mechanical tension. So what is mechanical tension? Essentially, it's a force acting against you in exercise. So anything from weights to gravity to full range of movement. So depending on how much range of movement in flexion or extension you do, in other words, flexion, i.e. concentric, extension, usually eccentric, so the lowering portion. Both are very important at growing for growing muscle mass. So I see a lot of people when they do volume loads, like in push-ups, etc. online, and they're just smashing out reps. They're not getting the right mechanical tension in order to grow that muscle mass. So concentric and eccentric are the 2 most primary drivers to grow muscle mass during this time. Or any time, should I say. So isometric holds and, top of the movements where there is the least form of tension, mechanical tension, they don't provide as much muscle growth. They're great for maybe strengthening muscles, they're great for maybe activating muscles, but like passive stretches, but they're not good at of course doing anything for muscle growth. So I would say focus on controlled reps, i.e. 1 or 2 seconds up, 1 or 2 seconds down. Get full maximal load. We'll move on to the next phase now. Second one is metabolic stress. Now, what is metabolic stress? Well, explained simply, it is down-regulating your muscles. So essentially, it's like a catabolic effect or catabolism. Catabolism, explained simply, is the breakdown of complex molecules within the body. So in other words, in order to be anabolic, like you hear all the time, you have to first break down those muscles. So you have to have a catabolic effect to get the anabolic effect, or catabolism, anabolism. So in other words, you have to put the muscles under so much stress or metabolic stress in order for them to break down and rebuild and grow. Now, how do they rebuild and grow? Through anabolism. So in other words, the recovery, or should I say, the building of complex molecules. So when you build complex molecules back up, that's recovery time. So things like sleep, water, high protein, good carbs, fats, and of course micronutrients coming from your veg and all that stuff, which I have gone over in a previous video of what grammage to have per protein, carbs, fats. So check that video out. But of course, the build-up is the recovery process. And this all falls into the same category of catabolic and anabolic effect. They kind of work in tangent together because you're basically, when you're recovering, which is the anabolic effect. You're still breaking down molecules at the same time, which is the catabolic effect. So they kind of work in tangent, which just falls into the category of metabolism. So metabolism essentially is the processes such as anabolism and catabolism. So it's just the processes that happens in your body. So in other words, you cannot hack your metabolism in order to gain muscle or lose fat. The only way you can do it is by breaking down complex molecules and building them back up. Now, there are things you can do in order to build them back up quicker, which of course I think you know what I'm talking about. Those guys who seem to be 240 pounds. So, you know, I'm not going to say anything more because of YouTube algorithms, but we'll move on to the next process now. So the next one is time under tension, or should I say time under mechanical tension. So a lot of people, especially when doing bodyweight at the moment, they're still doing the wrong things. They're still, a lot of coaches online or whatever are still setting 3 sets of 10. So you're not maybe providing enough time for the tension to build up in order to get the full maximal hypertrophic response. So the full muscle potential. If you're able to do maybe 100 kilos on a bench press, then doing 3 sets of 10 push-ups just isn't going to cut it, because you know, maximal wise, that's probably like 30% of your max, might be not even that. So you need to be doing a hell of a lot more volume, but under the right mechanical tension. So time under a specific repetition is very important as well. So in other words, 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down in the movement. It's going to grow the maximal load of muscle you can get. Of course, you have to do it to almost absolute failure, but you want to be able to provide enough stimulus so you've got enough sets left in you, so you can do it, you know, 3, 4, 5 sets, however many sets you want to do. But don't diminish the sets. Try to aim for a similar rep range under the similar time frame, i.e. 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down. And if you're doing only body weight and you don't have any weights, limiting rest time can help, because it can restrict blood flow. Now, restricting blood flow in some studies has actually been shown, or lactate buildup in some sense, has been shown to maximize muscle hypertrophy. So if you're only doing like 30-40% of your max load or even less, you need to do it so you're building so much restriction of blood flow, i.e. just doing continuous reps under good mechanical tension, of course, you will then get the maximal effects of hypertrophy, so the breakdown of the molecules. And of course, you want to do it to near or almost practically failure. Now, if you're doing a superset, great, you know, do it to pretty much failure and it gets it done quicker, less rest time. Of course, that restricts blood flow. So that would be the next thing to suggest. Metabolic stress is dominant during anaerobic glycosis, and anaerobic glycosis is most dominant between 15 to 120 seconds of exercise, i.e. anaerobic glycosis being weights. So 15 seconds isn't much, so you want to maximize load as much as possible. Of course, if you have a weighted vest or weights, brilliant. You want to maximize as much load. So 6 to 12 repetitions would be the perfect rep range for, you know, to near failure for absolute muscle growth, or at least studies have come to this conclusion. However, there are studies that have shown that you can maximize plus 20 reps, providing you do it within a set time frame of maybe 120 seconds. So of course, if you only got body weight, you need to do more repetitions, continuous, in order to get similar effects. But if you have obviously both, I would recommend doing a split of heavy and light loading days. So in other words, or even just a split of heavy loading and light loading cycles. So you can maybe do it 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off of heavy and light loading. I mean, there are no perfect ways of loading cycles, but you need both heavy loads and light loads in order to get full development of a particular muscle, i.e. chest, bicep, whatever it is. So heavy and light works best, essentially. Load matters. Who'd have thought? Next, we're going to go through muscle damage. Now, how do we maximize muscle damage? So we've got to think about volume, sets, reps, and load. A load, of course, being heavier load. So adding more weight. If you can't add more weight, got to focus on more volume. Simple as that. But in order to get the maximal amount of muscle damage, we also have to have the good recovery time. So cycling out programs is the best thing to do, and having deload days or even just rest days, full rest and recovery. So you need to maximize anabolism through proteins, like I said before, food, etc., sleep, recovery. So I would say, based on the individual, based on your experience, some people's genetics as well. Obviously, age matters. So genetically, you diminish your hypertrophic responses over time. You need more recovery. So take those factors into account. So if you're less experienced, maybe take more recovery time. If you're someone who is genetically inclined to build up a lot of lactate and build up a lot of muscle damage, it can be a detriment to your training if you continue to train at an excessive rate. So please bring it down when you can. I'll talk about cycling loading in a minute. So next we're going to talk about multi-set protocols. So multi-set protocols are the best way of building hypertrophic response according to most studies. Obviously things are up for debate, but we're going to say that multi-sets matter, and progressing load or progressing volume over time matters. So essentially what that means, in order to facilitate recovery, you need to progress things over, I would say, like a linear period. So in other words, essentially what that means, I'm not saying you should do 10 sets of 3 repetitions on, like, say, push-ups, but if you're an absolute beginner, maybe that's all you can do. Now, the following week, you know, you've done it 3-4 times that week. The following week, you want to do 12 reps for 3 sets. The following week, you want to do 15 reps for 3 sets. And obviously, if you're more intermediate, maybe it's 30 reps for 3 sets. And then moving on to a different muscle group. And then the next week, it'll be 50 reps for 3 sets. You get where I'm going here. So progressively add volume or progressively add load, i.e. strength training, you know, anywhere between 1 to 5 reps. You can add load over a period of time. It's the same thing in strength training, like a linear process. Obviously there are different structures you can do, but this is the most basic form I'm talking about. So after you've built up a certain amount of progression, as you start to get more muscle damage, more fatigue, more metabolic stress, of course you want to build deloads in there. So deloads being less volume or less weight, and having a time to allow your muscles to recover enough so you're not putting too much damage. You allow your metabolic responses, your anabolism, your catabolism to level out, so your metabolism levels out, so you're not constantly putting your body under strain. You're allowing it to recover. That is the next best step. Obviously sleep is very important, like we've gone over, limiting alcohol and eating those juicy vitamins. So in conclusion to that, all people have different genetics and they have different training experience. So rest days are best set by the individual. So set programs are great, but if you need a rest day, please take it. However, for those of y'all lazy asses out there who just can't be bothered and using a rest day as an excuse, you know who you are. Please stop doing that. Allow yourself to get a good metabolic stress, metabolic damage, and good mechanical tension. Yes, and on a final note, before we go into the full conclusion of this, aerobic training or type 1 muscle fibers. So are you able to grow muscles with doing cardiovascular workouts? Yes and no. Sometimes aerobic training can actually be a detriment to your muscle growth, but it has to be over long distances. So if you're going 35, 50 mile bike rides or long runs, it can be a detriment to your muscle growth, and it can actually induce catabolism and breaking down on the muscles. But there is hope for some of us yet, because you can do things. If you get, say, on a bike, you can do hill climbs under a high resistance and a high load. If you can max out between 15 to 120 seconds, absolutely, with blood flow restriction, it does allow you to grow muscle growth. So you can get hypertrophy through that. Or if you don't have a bike, sprints up hills. You know, if you're building up enough lactate in that short space of time, you can, of course, build muscle. However, I would recommend doing your aerobic and anaerobic days separately. So your anaerobic days obviously just being mechanical tension, building up muscle mass through weight load, like a weight training. But aerobic training, of course, being on a separate day. So for maximizing muscle growth, you can do it with aerobic training too. So in conclusion, studies have shown that anything between 6 to 12 rep ranges is best for mechanical, tension and metabolic stress. However, if you cannot get to that rep range because you're only doing body weight training, please work to near failure of doing high volume repetitions. Work your muscle groups 2 to 3 times per week for optimal hypertrophic load, but please cycle in and out your strength and volume rep ranges. So in other words, anywhere between 1 to 20 plus reps you can do in order to get the best hypertrophic response. In other words, you can maximize muscle potential by going into different rep ranges in different cycles. Every 6 to 12 weeks, cycle out from full body weight movements to singular body weight movements to high load to low load to high volume. That is the best way to get muscle growth. And of course, finally, exercise selection is key. So please vary up your exercises. So you can do bench press, chest fly, push-ups, incline push-ups, decline push-ups, archer push-ups. Exercise selection is key for building the overall muscle growth of a muscle. Of course, you can favor one depending on your genetics, but it is best to obviously maximize muscle potential through different selections. And of course, finally, something that I didn't put in earlier is it's all about connecting the motor patterns. Please, please, please work on form and full rep range of movement first. So you want to be able to connect the neural motor patterns in order to get the best muscle potential. So please take time in building up slowly, progressively, and then deloading when you need to. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you have found this video very interesting. Please share this to your friends if they are struggling to grow muscle during this time. I know I have, because like I said in the last video, I don't really like body weight training, but I'm going to do my best in order to maximize my growth. I have dropped a few pounds. I'm no longer 200 pounds. I'm down to like 192 now. So I'm going to build that muscle mass back up. You know, I'm starting to look a little bit small. I need to gain it myself. So if you didn't understand any of that in this video, comment below and I'll fill in some blanks. Or alternatively, if you really enjoy this video, please share that out and we can get the scientific community of people getting muscle. I don't even know what I mean by that, but let's go. I'm going to see you in that next video. Next video is the Muay Thai mixed martial arts circuit style video. Most of you know that it's coming out, but those of you who don't, tune in 6 p.m. Friday to make sure that you're going to do that workout with me. So you're not just getting muscle growth, you're getting skills here, guys. That's what this channel is all about. It's about growing muscle, it's about getting strong, it's about conditioning, it's about skill-based exercises. Boom! I'll see you in that next one.